Good morning, good morning. Welcome. Come on into the conversation. I am so very excited to share this morning. Hello, it's nice and early here. And I wanted to share a little conversation of something that has been sitting with me. It's a conversation that sits with me often, but this particular thread of leadership has been sitting with me deeply because of a session I had recently with a client. And we are all innately leaders. We are leading ourselves. So whether you consider yourself a leader or not, we are all leading ourselves through this life. And so it is a conversation that is woven into the work that I do in sessions with clients, with embodiment work and deep healing. And we have discussions about the expression of leadership, the expression of our leadership, and how that flows through us, and where they live within your identities, within your expressions. So, for example, if you identify as a leader, maybe you lead community, maybe you lead a family, maybe you're a caregiver, maybe in your workplace you actually wear the hat of, manager or CEO or something of sorts. But essentially, every human on the planet, we are all leading ourselves through our lives and through our path, And so I love to invite the question, do you identify as a leader? And whatever the answer is okay, because there is no wrong or right answer there. The answer is an opportunity to go a little deeper and have a look at and to become really curious with your relationship with leadership. And so one of the really interesting things that happened last week in conversation, as I mentioned with the session with this human, just blew my mind and had me going deeper and had me journaling about my relationship with leadership. And this is why I love the work with incredible humans, because it invites me into these incredible spaces. And so, our discussion was basically around the fact that this person didn't consider themselves a leader, even though they, from my perspective, from the outward onlooker, they absolutely exuded every quality and of a leader. And initially, we actually did. We opened up our container, our 10-week session, actually with a numerology chart, and the entire chart was mapped out leadership. And so we talked about that. And they were like, no, don't consider myself a leader. I gave up on that thought. And I paused. As soon as I heard I gave up on the thought of being a leader, that was the opportunity, that was the opening, that was a moment of truth, of realization, a moment for us to go even deeper and to invite more questions. And so I wanted to understand a little bit as to why. And this is what had me so excited. And the reason why is because throughout their career, as they were stepping into numerous leadership roles, they were met with nothing but conflict. They were bumping heads. It was a struggle. It was so challenging. And I thought that was interesting. So then I asked, what is your relationship with leadership? Do you believe, is there a belief in there that when you take on a leadership role, that it's going to be easy, that everyone is going to meet your ideas with open arms and implement those changes, especially within that, workplace scenario. And it was really interesting because that question actually caught them off guard. They're like, oh. And so I actually invited them, part of their homework this week was to name one leader. It can be any leader that have lived at any time, anywhere in the globe, that has never encountered conflict. So I'm interested to see what they'll come up with this week, who they name. And then the other fold of that homework was to note some inspiring leaders, maybe that they've encountered in their life, or maybe that's in the public figure or eye that they do look up to. And so, it's interesting when we reach those points of hitting brick walls, and so let's dive into that more, right? And so we hit brick walls, we hit friction, we meet conflict, and then that builds, that's interesting, right? Because that can build and form stories and beliefs, but it's really playing on a lot of existing beliefs and existing stories. So if there's already narratives within you of I'm a failure, or I'm not good at this, or oh my God, no one ever listens to me, I'm not being heard, then those types of narratives will then also influence the present experiences you're experiencing. And if you can observe the situation when you're meeting that brick wall and meeting that conflict and having, those conversations in that community as a leader, to actually look at those opportunities or those moments as opportunities, as openings to maybe have a look at your approach, look at your inner dialogue, and look to see what needs are within yourself. Maybe ask the group what their needs are. And it's interesting because, when we are leading others, we are inspiring the stretching and expansion of not only ourselves, because we are, walking with it and inviting others to walk alongside of us. And in this stretching, in this expansion, we're meeting other people's beliefs. So there can be conflict because maybe what you're saying and what you're inviting them to walk alongside goes completely against maybe their narrative, even though they desire it, even though that narrative may no longer serve them. You're still meeting those narratives and can still create that inner conflict. And so it's really interesting to look at these things, and I think it's especially oh, you're welcome, yeah. Priestessing in the body. Yeah, I would love to hear more of your thoughts when you catch the replay. You're welcome. And so I'd like to invite a few questions into this container, some expansion questions, and I wrote these down, and I will post them in the description, so you'll be able to see them. Feel free to answer them in the comments. Feel free to use them as journal prompts. This is a discussion here. I'd love to know what your relationship is with leadership. And so, do you feel illuminated at the idea of you in leadership? So whether that be the idea of you in self-led leadership, maybe that's the idea of you in a leadership role in your community, maybe, it's just one particular aspect. Do you feel that when someone in leadership roles Do you feel that when someone is in leadership roles, everything runs smooth and easy? That's a good one. Do you feel conflict is a reflection of our ability or capacity as a leader? So, does conflict share a direct relationship with your ability to lead? And what are the feelings that rise when you think of these moments? Can you name leaders that have never encountered brick walls or conflict? In what ways are we holding onto the expectation of how we think our leadership path will be expressed? What ways can we allow leadership to express itself through us, to show us, to guide us? Are you allowing your leadership essence to guide you? And so I invite these last few questions because of my own personal experience and my own story with leadership, where I, quite a few years back, I had this goal, this intention of building a wellness center / spa in the community. And that was how I was going to show up in a leadership role, bring wellness to the community. Like, that was it. That was the vision. And so I did just so. I opened up a space. I had 12 employees. It was it was running quite successfully on the outside and even on paper. But I was met with so much conflict, and a lot of folks just weren't on board with, the wellness aspect and where I was taking the company. And it was really hard to find employees who were in alignment, especially in that small community. And it was just brick wall and conflict over conflict. And I felt I was met with every single one of the, narratives that really deflated me. And I felt like, oh my God, what am I doing here? I'm not being accepted. All of these things were met not in the way that I thought. And so I felt like my dreams were crushed. I felt like, oh my God, my heart's desire and soul's purpose of showing up in leadership in a way of wellness on my spiritual path is not going to come true, because I held the expectation of it looking a certain way. And so oftentimes we think, yep, we have this desire, this is how my leadership role is going to show up, this is the channel in which I'm going to flow my leadership vibes through. But I had to unplug that channel completely. It was 10 years ago now. I decided to let go of the business, let go of the brick and mortar, go on my own, regroup, recalibrate. And I knew that I had to let that go so I could revisit and redesign how my leadership plug-in was going to flow through. What was that going to look like? Because that was not it. And I was exhausting my energy trying to make it work in a space that was only burning me out. And I knew in my heart and soul and body that it was burning me out and soul sucking, but I stayed anyway and longer because I felt like that was the only channel, the only way that it was possible for me to express this heart's desire. And so letting that go 10 years ago opened up my world completely. And it is still opening up, and it has been honestly a decade of me peeling back the layers of control, of how I try to control and manipulate the channel in which my leadership was going to flow through, versus sitting with and inviting that leadership frequency within me to guide me. And what I'm really now coming into the depths of realization after 10 years of doing the work, 10 years of, deep healing and practices and, various courses and trainings and all the things, I am really coming to recognize how to, it sounds funny, but follow the essence of that leadership. There's this innate wisdom that already is flowing through. I don't need to sit here and think, okay, how am I going to lead? That is already within me, and it's about trusting the body, trusting my intuition, right? And trusting my capacity, and trusting my ability to show up and hold space. And the more that I show up and hold space for my inner leader and nurture that space and cultivate that space and have these conversations that bring awareness, the more I am able to allow that to guide me, right? And each moment are opportunities to be self-led. Every moment we're presented with choices. And really, leadership is a series of choices. And our decisions can be made through that heartfelt, embodied connection, or they can be made through past experiences. They can be made through ego or fear. They can be made through the lens of the narrative that no longer serve. And so this last decade of really diving into embodiment and what that means for me has completely re-illuminated my leadership and what inspires me as a leader. And I've had the opportunity recently to really, really step in those roles and play with that. Does this feel good? Does this feel good? Okay. How does it feel? It comes back to, how does it feel in the heart? How does it feel in the body? And to know that whatever outward circumstances, so let's kind of wrap it up here. I hope this channel is making sense. And so let's try to wrap it up here in one cohesive container. We are all innately leaders. We flow through an expression of leadership. And that expression of leadership is tied to our relationship with visibility, our relationship with self-expression, our relationship with embodiment. Our ability to self-lead is also directly impacted by our capacity to hold space for self. And when we are in a role, if we are even human, we're self-led, but especially if you are a space holder, especially if you are someone who leads others, it is important to come back to some of these questions and threads of your relationship to leadership, And if what is showing up for you, your experiences as you walk your path of leadership, as you lead others, Notice how you react and respond to these things. If there is uncomfortable conflict, how do you respond? Maybe if it's, that moment of happy and joyous, how do you respond, And, so let me know how this lands, how this sits with you. Are there more questions that you would guide yourself here? Pop them in the comments. What do you think? How do you feel about this conversation? And so each moment is our opportunity to lead ourselves through our everyday choices and experiences. Trust the wisdom of your body. Trust your breath. And trust your capacity and space that you hold. Thank you so much for this connection. And if you are looking for a guide, I have spaces open this summer for my embodiment container one-on-one sessions, and there's a few different ways we can work together in that container as well. And I am also opening up space for healing sessions and intuitive readings. So for those of you who want to dive into messages from Spirit, let me know. And I am here. If you have any questions and just like to chit chat about some of the things that we talked about, I am here for it all. So thank you so much for the incredible work that you're doing. I really, really appreciate it. Because you're not alone. We're truly doing this together. And just know that the impact that we have is so far-reaching. So far-reaching. The one thing that is often reflected to me is we have no idea who's watching, right? Who's watching us on our social media, who is watching us walk the walk, maybe watching us in our real lives in real time. Who's observing, right? And just know that just you being you, just breathing, does have an impact and a ripple on the world. It really does. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me here on the mat with my morning meditation. As you can see the woods. Until next time, beauties.